No vote in the United Nations will make any difference on that. But this vote will make a difference on how Americans look at the UN and on how we look at countries who disrespect us in the UN. And this vote will be remembered.
Haley is throwing a party and invited only the 65 nations who did not vote against the United States at the UN General Assembly this week. The invitation, which was circulated on Twitter, alerts guests that Haley was inviting them to thank you for your friendship to the United States. The General Assembly voted 128-9, with 35 abstentions, in favor of declaring Trump's recognition of Jerusalem as Israel's capital null and void. 21 countries were absent during the vote. Earlier, Haley has adopted an aggressive stance at the world body on the United States' priorities, took to Twitter to voice her appreciation to the countries who didn't vote against the United States for not falling to the irresponsible ways of the UN. The Trump administration needs to use this as a fulcrum to look at funding of the UN system more broadly, former the United States ambassador to the UN John Bolton said on Fox News. Trump linked the UN vote to the future of assistance from the United States to foreign countries, telling reporters, "Let them vote against us. We'll save a lot. We don't care." Haley added that the United States would be taking names. Way to go, Nikki. She has truly been doing a wonderful job lately, and there has even been talk of her being presidential material. Fox News insider explained that Lieutenant Colonel Ralph Peters praised Haley on Fox Business Network. He stated that she may end up as our first female president. Peters was proud of Haley for standing up for President Trump and his decision. "This woman is truly a blessing to our country. Anyone who knows history understands that Jerusalem is, and always has been, the rightful capital of Israel. This has been so for thousands of years. On top of that, Israel has the right to decide where its own capital is." President Trump had a wonderful idea when he announced that the United States would formally be moving its embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. The left, however, is very unhappy with the announcement.
United States Ambassador to the UN, John Negroponte. It's good to see you, sir. Remind me, why had the United States not taken this formal step of recognizing Jerusalem and trying to move the embassy before now?
Well, I think Congress passed legislation back in '95 dictating that that should be the case. And following sort of the consensus of a lot of other countries, we considered the question of Jerusalem something that would be in the final settlement discussions with regard to peace between Israel and the Palestinians. So we withheld making that move. Now the president's gone and made his statement, and as your reporter just said, we'll have to see what he does next. What steps does he take to move the embassy to Jerusalem?
And they also, in her speech today, Nikki Haley said that the borders of Jerusalem had not been defined in the president's statement. From your experience, how unprecedented is this UN vote?
Well, I mean, I was ambassador to the United Nations for almost 3 years, and I spent a lot of time defending the United States position in support of Israel and fending off these kinds of resolutions. The vote didn't seem that overwhelming to me. In fact, I think the Israeli ambassador was right to point out that some 65 countries either abstained or just didn't show up.
Right.
And that's not a bad showing.
Did the is this a lot about domestic politics, maybe not only in our country, but also in the nations that voted against the United States?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's certainly a domestic politics here, I think, in terms of keeping a campaign promise and showing support for Israel, which is a popular thing to do here politically. Over in the rest of the world, I think the Arabs are sort of between the rock and the hard place, because after all, this is a very sensitive issue in their countries. Take just a friendly country for an example, the country of Jordan. They receive a lot of assistance from the United States, but they also have a very large Palestinian population that lives in their country. And if they were to vote with us on something like this, they would face the serious possibility of unrest. We don't want unrest. We've said we don't want failed states. We don't want turmoil in that part of the world. So there's a lot of different considerations to be balanced here.
Indeed, it's always more complex than meets the eye. Take a look at this chart here. There's 4 countries that get the most military aid from the United States. It is Iraq, of course, Israel, Afghanistan, and Egypt. You know, the president yesterday said, look, if we can't get support here, we might take a look at our financial contributions, either to the UN or to these countries. Do you see any of that coming to fruition, that money would be withdrawn from these countries?
Well, yeah, I would hope the president doesn't follow up too quickly on that. We don't give aid just because of the way countries vote in the United Nations, although it'd be helpful if they voted along with us or abstained. We do that kind of thing out of our own national self-interest, and because, as many of the people who have been involved in the war on terror will tell you, we don't want to see failed states. We don't want to see ungoverned spaces. We don't want to see instability in that part of the world, which others can then prey upon. So this aid is given in the national security interest of the United States.
It occurred to me that they probably thought they could get money from places like China or Russia if it wasn't coming from the United States.
Well, but that's a risk, too. That may not be such a good thing, because if they do come in and give aid, it'll be another way of their increasing their influence at our expense.
Okay, a last question, maybe kind of a fun one. Why did Nauru vote with us?
They've done that for years. I always watched that back 10, 15 years ago when I was at the UN. Some of these Micronesian states out there in the Western Pacific consistently have voted with us, including Nauru.
Well, we appreciate them, absolutely. Ambassador Negroponte, thank you so much. It's good to see you.
We do indeed. Thank you.
Thank you, God bless you, and God bless America.